Wichita, Kansas. A quiet Midwestern town where neighbors greeted each other with smiles, families left their doors unlocked, and life seemed simple. But in 1974, the peace was shattered by a string of murders that would haunt the community for decades. The killer called himself BTK, bind, torture, kill. He wasn't just a murderer, he was a sadist who thrived on inflicting pain and fear. For years, he played a twisted game of cat and mouse with law enforcement, taunting them with letters and riddles. But the most chilling part, the man behind these horrific crimes wasn't a shadowy figure lurking in the dark. He was a devoted church leader, a family man, and a trusted member of his community. His name was Dennis Rader. How does someone live such a double life? How did he evade capture for more than 30 years, and how did his arrogance eventually bring him down? This is the story of Dennis Rader, the BTK Killer. Early life and first crimes. Dennis Rader was born on March 9, 1945 in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and grew up in nearby Wichita. From the outside, his childhood seemed uneventful. He was the eldest of 4 boys, raised in a working-class family. But Rader himself would later admit that he felt invisible as a child, overshadowed by his younger brothers and craving attention. Early on, there were warning signs. Rader confessed that as a boy, he developed violent sexual fantasies. He would torture animals, binding and killing them, a disturbing behavior often seen in the early lives of serial killers. These fantasies of dominance and control over helpless victims would later manifest in unspeakable ways. By the 1970s, Rader appeared to have left his dark tendencies behind. He had served in the U.S. Air Force, married his wife Paula, and settled into a steady life in Wichita. He worked for ADT Security, where he installed home security systems, a grim irony considering his future crimes. To his neighbors, he was friendly, polite, and entirely unremarkable. But on January 15, 1974, Dennis Rader revealed his true self. That day, he broke into the home of the Otero family, marking the start of his reign of terror. Inside the house were Joseph Otero, his wife Julie, and their 2 children, 11-year-old Joseph Jr. and 9-year-old Josephine. Rader had meticulously planned the attack, cutting the phone lines before entering the home. Once inside, he held the family at gunpoint, binding their hands and feet with cord. The murders were brutal and calculated. Rader strangled Joseph and Julie first, forcing their children to watch. He then turned his attention to Joseph Jr., choking the boy until he stopped breathing. Finally, he led Josephine to the basement, where he hanged her from a pipe. When the bodies were discovered, the community was in shock. 4 innocent lives had been taken in a single act of unimaginable violence. The police were desperate for answers, but there were no leads, no witnesses, and no apparent motive. The Otero murders sent a clear message. Wichita was no longer safe. Method of operation. For Rader, killing was more than a crime, it was a compulsion. He referred to his victims as projects and took great pride in planning his attacks. He would stalk his targets for days, sometimes weeks, learning their routines and figuring out the best time to strike. Once inside, he followed a chilling ritual: bind, torture, kill. He immobilized his victims using bindings that he brought with him, before subjecting them to psychological and physical torment. The kill was the final step, but for Rader, it wasn't the ultimate goal. He wanted control. He wanted to see the fear in his victims' eyes, to know that their lives were in his hands. But Rader's need for control didn't end with the murders. He began sending taunting letters to police and local newspapers. These letters, filled with gruesome details of his crimes, were Rader's way of ensuring he remained in the spotlight. In one letter he wrote, How many do I have to kill before I get my name in the paper or some national attention? Rader even gave himself the nickname BTK, bind, torture, kill, a name that would become infamous across the country. His arrogance was unparalleled. In one letter, he left clues about future killings and even described how he planned to dispose of his victims. But despite his brazenness, Rader managed to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. Life as the perfect neighbor. What made Rader so terrifying was his ability to blend into society. He was the picture of normalcy, a devoted husband, a proud father, and an active member of his church. He even served as the president of his congregation, organizing community events and leading Bible studies. Rader's job as a compliance officer in Park City gave him a position of authority, which he relished. He was known for being strict, issuing citations for overgrown lawns and barking dogs. Some residents found him overbearing, but no one suspected he was a cold-blooded killer. To his neighbors, Rader was kind and dependable. He mowed his lawn, attended family barbecues, and even helped a neighbor build a deck. But behind closed doors, he was a man consumed by his sadistic fantasies. The restart and his downfall. After his last known murder in 1991, Rader went silent. For more than a decade, the BTK Killer seemed to vanish. Some speculated he had died, been arrested, or simply lost his urge to kill. But in 2004, Rader couldn't resist the spotlight any longer. That year, he sent a letter to a local newspaper, reigniting fear in Wichita. Over the next several months, he continued to send taunting messages, including one that contained a question. Could the police trace a floppy disk he planned to send? Detectives saw this as their chance. When the disk arrived, they extracted metadata that revealed it had been used on a computer at Rader's church. From there, investigators collected DNA evidence from his daughter, which matched DNA left at crime scenes. In February 2005, Rader was arrested. His confession was chilling. He spoke about his murders in a detached, almost clinical manner, describing them as if they were nothing more than a hobby. In court, Rader gave detailed accounts of his crimes, horrifying the families of his victims. He was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms, ensuring he would never walk free. Dennis Rader's story is one of terror and deception. A man who fooled everyone around him while committing some of the most horrific crimes in history. What drove Rader to commit these acts? Was it his insatiable need for power and recognition? Or was it something even darker? Let us know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more chilling true crime stories. Until next time, stay safe.